The issue of obesity and air travel is back in the news because an airline from Finland called Finnair, which sounds like someone from Essex saying thin air, it came out of thin air, I can't do the accent, they have triggered the body positivity movement. And that's the movement for people who believe that all bodies, or at least all female bodies, are beautiful. Us chaps were still just fat. Because the airline has begun weighing its passengers before they board the aircraft. So the proud to be obese brigade, they're calling it body shaming and fat phobic and generally screaming and waving their arms around. Which is nice because that way they get some exercise. Now, I am far from thin. No one is looking at me and praying that one day I'll beat the anorexia. Nor am I here to tell anyone how to live their lives. However, one's actions do have consequences, and if you spend every waking moment furiously shoveling junk food down your gullet, at some point you're going to become rather portly. And that will limit the things you are able to do. For example, last year, I flew a plane for the first time. But before I could even get into the cockpit of the de Havilland Tiger Moth, because that's how I roll, I had to be weighed to check I was light enough, so that my weight wouldn't impede the abilities of the aircraft. So I would make the point, if that applies to light aircraft, why not apply the same principle to all forms of air travel? Because if you had an aeroplane with 200 Lizzos on board, assuming it could even move under its own power, let alone get off the runway, at least without the assistance of one of those solid rocket boosters they used to use on the space shuttle, that aircraft will use a lot more fuel than, say, an aeroplane containing 200 Dua Lipas. 200 Dua Lipas. There's a thought. So the fat activists have been ranting incoherently on social media, and of course it's incoherent, their pudgy fingers can't push one key at a time. And they're only on social media whilst they're waiting for the batteries for their mobility scooters to recharge so they can go to Greggs for the 4th time that day. However, among all the ramblings, they appear to have missed a rather important point. The people being weighed by Finnair are doing so voluntarily. So here is a photo of the scales, and I think the Finns have missed a trick here. If they'd incorporated a chair onto the scales, they would get more of the body positivity movement to partake, because God knows they love a sit down. So the people volunteering to be weighed, I guarantee they will be the type of people who live at the gym, who will walk through the airport wearing lycra just to show off how fucking ripped they are. But even if it was compulsory, I don't see the issue, because at most airports now, we walk through a machine that allows an airport employee to have a look at our genitals. And these scales, it's only airport employees, specifically employees for Finnair, who can see how much people weigh. If there was a 10-foot screen flashing, look at this lardy bastard, then yes, there'd be a problem. But something else the activists have missed is that Finnair aren't trying to work out how much their customers weigh. They're trying to work out the weight of their clothing. So, during the winter, Finland is, and I'll try and use the correct meteorological term, fucking freezing. Meaning that everyone travelling to or from that country will be wearing heavy winter clothing. So what the airline are trying to do is work out how much more that clothing weighs during the winter when compared to the clothing people wear during summer when most people are on holiday. Because by doing that, they can calculate how much less fuel the aircraft needs to carry, meaning the airline is spending less money, which means cheaper air travel for everyone. I'll say that again, cheaper air travel for everyone. If you heard a pop in the distance, that was Greta Thunberg exploding. And it was only last year that the body positivity crowd were making the demands that if someone is too obese to fit into an airline seat, then they should be given another 1 or even 2 seats for free, and that the rest of the passengers should subsidise it. Well, no, I'm not small, but I can fit into an airline seat. And everyone else shouldn't have to fund someone's poor lifestyle choices. I've got a clip coming up that I've pulled from X, and sadly, the woman doing the explaining is a fellow Brit.
If you have a problem with someone's fat body, because that's what it is, it's fat, overspilling it into your seat, that's not the person's problem, okay? It's the airline's problem, because that's who you're paying your money for. It means they're not an inclusive company. They're not including people of different sizes. So if it's affecting you, think how much it's affecting that person. Now, her response to this was that people should measure their bodies and the seats before they book a flight. Find me a flight that's size inclusive, because I've never heard of it. More to the point, we shouldn't have to do that. The air companies should accommodate for everyone. Because I hate to break it to you, there's nothing wrong with being fat. People are fat for a variety of reasons, none of which are any of your business. The airline's business. So if you have a problem with fat people taking up your space, we have a problem as fat people that space isn't given to us in the first place. So perhaps it would be more beneficial, instead of doing fatphobic TikTok videos, to use your thin privilege and mention that to the airline, that it's affecting everybody.
The brightly coloured hair and too many facial piercings, I knew I wasn't going to take her seriously before she'd even opened her mouth. Now, I have an issue with airlines if they lose my luggage, or if, and you'll know this if you're from the UK, when they decide to put extra charges on. Now, there's one budget carrier that always does this. On the flight out, my hand luggage will be absolutely fine. On the way back, as I'm preparing to board the aircraft, suddenly it's too big or too heavy and I have to pay to put it in the hold. It's too heavy, so they put it in the hold on the same plane. But when I buy a plane ticket, if the person next to me starts leaking into my space, as it were, I don't have an issue with the airline. I have an issue with the other passenger. Because when I buy a plane ticket, I am renting that seat and the space that goes with it. If there is another person who doesn't possess the ability to walk past a chip shop, that shouldn't affect my or anyone else's comfort or safety. And how bad does the fat person, her words, not mine, how bad does the fat person feel? Well, I'm guessing if you have someone who's fully aware they won't fit into a conventional airline seat, who chooses to book a ticket where they will be sat next to a stranger, I don't think that person feels particularly bad. In fact, I'm guessing they don't give a fuck about anyone other than themselves. And her comment about not being given space, you are the same amount of space as everyone else. Her comment about thin privilege, I believe thin privilege is just being able to exercise a degree of self-control. And if airlines did start to cater for larger people, then there would be less seats, ergo less passengers, so ticket prices would have to rise. And I don't think our portly friend would like that. If it cost her more for a fortnight in Benidorm, because they always go to fucking Benidorm every year. That way, she'd probably only have, 5 takeaways a week instead of 6? The way I see it, there are 3 viable options. Number 1, if you are the weight and size of 2 people, then buy 2 tickets. Number 2, upgrade to first class. There's much more room there. Or number 3, why not lose some fucking weight? Her comment that there's nothing wrong with being fat. Really, has there never been a medical study about morbid obesity? The clue is in the name, morbid. Your weight will contribute to your early demise. I've got a 4th option. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. I'm just thinking of passenger aircraft. She said about measuring oneself before flying. Well, why not use a Hercules? Those things carry tanks. It'd be fine. In fact, it wouldn't have to be a military plane. How about this? In the future, when we go to the airport, there could be someone going, yes, you, airliner, airliner, airliner. You, Tubby, you're flying freight. But there is something worse than being sat next to a large person on a flight. If that flight contains a TikToker. I had to mute that clip to get around copyright, and I have trimmed it back because you deserve that mercy. To me, that's an argument for bringing back sky marshals. Do you remember those guys? The undercover armed guards on all flights, who were always really hard to spot. You've got an entire plane full of boisterous, excited tourists and one American guy with no hand luggage wearing a suit. No hand luggage, but he's got a handgun. The sheer ego on that dancing half-wit. You can see all the other passengers aren't comfortable with him fist bumping and high-fiving. In particular, the guy he goes to high-five and then pulls away from hilariously. Now, if I were the Sky Marshal on that flight, I'd be thinking that youth is getting a fucking bullet. And I'd get away with it, because once the crowd had finished cheering, I'd say, right, if anyone asks any questions, all say he was waving a knife around. Anyway, that's the end of this video. If you've enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. And as ever, thanks for watching. Fat shaming, fat phobic. I've said fat twice. Fuck it, transphobic, everything else is now. For example, you had a plane with fuck it. You had a plane with, say, 200 Lizzos compared... Not telling anyone how they should live their lives. Not yet, anyway. I'm not ruling out a cult. First class, there's much more room. Fucking bollocks to it. First class, there's much more room. And 3, why not try losing some weight? Eat less, move more. It's not fucking rocket science. Why should the... Nearly.